Good morning. I'm just going to make sure I'm live on Facebook as well, and I am. Good morning. It's 11:30 a.m. on a Tuesday, and that means it's time for First Chapter Fun. How is everyone? How's everyone doing? I hope you're well. I'll chat a bit and make sure that people are seeing me. I see people have already joined on Instagram. Hi, Brooke. We're reading from Brooke's book today. Good morning, Robin. Hi, Glennie. Lots of people already joining. This is absolutely wonderful. So lovely to see you. Reading once a week now is really odd because it used to be daily until May, and now it's not, of course, anymore. It's just once a week. But if this is the first time you've joined First Chapter Fun, my name is Hannah Mary McKinnon, and this is the place where my fictional partner in crime, my partner in fictional crime, because she's not fictional, the crime is, Hank Philippi Ryan, and I read a different chapter, the first chapter of a different book, twice a week. Every Tuesday and every Thursday, both on Instagram Live and on Facebook Lives. I have Instagram on my phone and Facebook here on my webcam. Never a dull moment when technology drops the connection, because it does happen sometimes, but I'll get back to that. So good morning, Daisy and Susan and Hank, of course, and Diane Freeman and Carla. Lots of people already joining. Lots of comments as well. Good morning, Shannon. So lovely to see you all. Good morning, Michelle. Such a treat to be here. And I just discovered this morning, I'd seen them before, but did you know there are filters on Instagram? That's why on Instagram I look like I'm about at least a decade younger than I do on Facebook. I just need to walk around with this phone in front of me, and so everyone can just see my face with the Instagram filter. It's the subtle one that kind of erases lines. I look like I'm at least a decade younger. I wish. Anyway, how was your week? How has everyone been? Another week of strangeness, I guess. Things are easing a little bit here in Ontario. Looks like my kids might be going back to their summer jobs at some point within the next week. They work at restaurants, so we'll see if that actually happens. So we're slowly getting there. My Fitbit died this morning, which really sucked because I was closing in on 100,000 steps over it's always a rolling average of this week, and it just died. So I wasn't very happy about that, but it's not, in the grand scheme of things, I don't really think my Fitbit dying is of any importance or significance at all. So, a couple of things. I am reading today from Brooke Lea Foster's wonderful book. Look at that cover. Isn't that just so inviting? Summer Darlings. You can see that there. This is the one that I'm reading from this morning. And Brooke is watching. She's on Instagram. Tracy said Hannah killed her Fitbit. I did. I was so frustrated. No, I didn't. It just died. But Brooke has joined us on Instagram, and I also see her on Facebook. So you can leave comments. You can ask her stuff. We have Michelle who just said, I've heard great things about Summer Darlings. Yes, likewise. And Robin says that she loves the title. So Brooke is here. You can ask her lots and lots of questions about the book, about her writing process, about her ideas, about the cover, this gorgeous cover. Ask her whatever you like. Now, on Instagram, once I stop the video, once I stop going live, it will be then posted to our feed, but all of your lovely comments disappear. But you get to watch it again because we always save these videos onto our Instagram Live, Instagram IGTV, I should say, and of course in the First Chapter Fun Facebook group under the videos section. So if you're watching on Facebook, make sure you go follow us on Instagram as well at First Chapter Fun. And if you're on Instagram and you have a Facebook account, please go and check out the group at First Chapter Fun as well. Good morning, Sharon. We have lots and lots of people joining, and it really is a pleasure to read from this book. I mentioned off the top, technological problems sometimes happen, and sometimes Facebook hasn't happened for a while, which means it'll happen today, but Facebook sometimes boots us out Instagram occasionally drops the connection. So if that happens, don't worry, it's me. It's not you. Go and get yourselves a cup of coffee or a cup of tea or iced tea or whatever you fancy and come back, because I will restart the recording on the platform that chucked me out. So, today's book, Summer Darlings by Brooke Lea Foster. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Brooke, and then I will read you the introduction and then it's quite a long first chapter, so I'm going to read you part of the first chapter. Make sure I don't mess up here and confuse all my papers. So, who is Brooke? Let me tell you. I'm going to put my glasses on because I'm blind. Brooke Lea Foster is an award-winning journalist whose articles have appeared in the New York Times, the Washington Post magazine, the Atlantic, the Boston Globe Sunday magazine, and Huffington Post, among others. And she's the author of 3 nonfiction books. Brooke is also an alumnus of the Writing Institute at Sarah Lawrence College, and when she's not writing, she works hard at going to beaches with her husband and kids. That sounds lovely to me. Summer Darlings is her first novel. You can find out tons more about Brooke on her website, which is Brooke Lea Foster, LEA.com. Instagram and Twitter, same Brooke Lea Foster, and on Facebook I'll make sure that the link works, because it isn't. Facebook is as stubborn as a mule, I tell you. Brooke Lea Foster writes, so I'll make sure all of the links are up to date. And of course, we always read these first chapters with the permission of the author, Brooke in this case, and her publisher, the wonderful Gallery Books. So there we go. Have to show you that cover again. It's just absolutely sublime, I think, is the word that we need to use to describe this cover. Okay, I'm excited to read this one. I'm excited to read all of them, but I'm excited because I only get to do this once a week. Okay, my Instagram sorry about that. My Instagram just paused. I knew something was going to happen. Never a dull moment, because one of those crank calls came in. You know, it looked like one of those weird calls. Anyway, we'll just ignore that. Let's pretend that didn't happen. And let me read you the back cover copy of Summer Darlings. Set during the splendid summer days of 1960's Martha's Vineyard, this page-turning debut novel pulls back the curtain on one mysterious and wealthy family, as seen through the eyes of their nanny, a college student who, while falling in love on the elegant island, is also forced to reckon with the dark underbelly of privilege. In 1962, Hetty Winsome leaves her hard-scrabble Irish Brooklyn neighbourhood behind and ferries to glamorous Martha's Vineyard to nanny for one of the wealthiest families on the island. But as she grows enamoured with the alluring and seemingly perfect young couple and chases after their 2 mischievous children, Hetty discovers that her academic scholarship at Wellesley has been revoked, putting her entire future at risk. Determined to find her place in the couple's wealthy social circles, Hetty nurtures a romance with the hip surfer down the beach, while wondering if the better man for her might be a quiet, studious college boy instead. But no one she meets on the summer island, socialite, starlet, or housekeeper, is as picture-perfect as they seem, and she quickly learns that the right last name and a house in a Tony zip code may guarantee privilege, but that rarely equals happiness. Rich with the sights and sounds of mid-century Martha's Vineyard, Brooke Lea Foster's debut novel Summer Darlings promises entrance to a rarefied world for readers who enjoyed Tigers in Red Weather or The Summer Wives. Doesn't that sound lovely? And Brooke says, I was a nanny one summer in the Hamptons. I was a nanny. I was an au pair, which amuses a lot of people because at the time I was adamant I was never going to have kids, and I have 3 and they're lovely and I love them. But I was a nanny. I was an au pair for a year. In Geneva, I went to learn French. I was living in the German-speaking part of Switzerland. and moved to Geneva to go there, stay there for a year. And I worked for a very, very, very wealthy family. And let's just say it was an interesting experience and leave it at that. So, Summer Darlings by Brooke Lea Foster. I will now read you chapter 1. And put my glasses back on. Jackie Kennedy sails these waters. In fact, the First Lady might be looking at the same sunlit cliffs as Hetty, and the thought of Jackie in her big black sunglasses placing a kiss on the President while their boat rounded Vineyard Sound tickled the corners of Hetty's mouth and made her peek over onto the deck of a wooden sailboat bobbing in the harbour. Hetty waved back at a man, shirtless and barefoot, holding a fishing line. He was no Jack Kennedy, but he wasn't half bad either. Pastel-striped umbrellas lined the beach as the ferry neared the dock, and the colours were familiar, even though she'd never stepped foot on the island before. Martha's Vineyard had become an obsession for Hetty that year at Wellesley after she'd overheard friends comparing where they'd stayed when they'd gone. But when movie star Gigi McCabe, the Gigi McCabe, posed in a barely there bikini for Look magazine, sunbathers oiled and stretched out on chaises longues around her, Hetty simply knew she had to go. She and her roommate hid the magazine from their house mother, who called it cheap trash and forbade any copies in the dormitory. Hetty had been drawn to the photo like a mosquito to a light, not because of the actress, but because of all those patrician noses and straw hats, white keds and elegant tanned wrists. She wanted to know this fabled summer culture, those beautiful people who sailed in the morning, dressed formally for dinner, and sipped champagne at sunset at the famed Island Club. Hetty pulled a small black notebook from her purse, pausing to take in the row of colourful Victorian houses lining the approaching town, and began to write. She was overwrought at arriving on the island, not only because she would live amid the wealthy, watching how money could take the edge off the sharpest points of life, but also because her job as a nanny would insert her into the home of a real family. There had been other well-paying options for summer jobs, of course, like the all-girls summer camp in the Catskills. But living with a family, she wrote, particularly an illustrious one, offered something the other jobs didn't, a peek into a well-tended marriage. When she snapped her journal shut, an envelope tucked inside drifted to the rounded tips of her sandals. She'd delayed opening the letter long enough, she thought, snatching it from the cement floor of the ferry. The enormous boat bumped against the dock as the crew began tying long, thick ropes to the pilings. She turned the thick parchment over in her hands. To think this whole mess was because of a boy, a Harvard boy. Maybe the scholarship committee would overlook her mistake, forgive her one small misstep and focus instead on everything she had accomplished. She was the only woman from her Catholic high school in Brooklyn to go to college. Her beloved literature professor, a mother of 3 who looked like Carol Burnett, had spent hours helping her to revise a short story last semester, and had even written an appeal in her favour, attesting Hetty had promise. And now? Hetty exhaled, slipping her finger under the envelope's tongue and tearing it open. Her eyes went straight to the first line. We regret to inform you that your scholarship for the 1962-1963 academic year has not been renewed due to... She didn't read the rest, crumpling the paper up in her fist. She hadn't believed they'd actually revoke it. She chewed on a fingernail, then another. Maybe it was what she deserved. Girls like her didn't get a do-over. Getting into Wellesley, where the quad smelled of fresh-cut grass and the simple act of walking to class bestowed on students a responsibility to make something of themselves, had been prize enough. and receiving the cheque allowing her to go had been a coup. How else would she have paid? She dabbed her eyes with the back of her wrists and stared at a departing ferry, this one transporting a crowd of vacationers back to the mainland. "A fool's paradise," said a young man who came to stand next to her, pushing his tortoise-rimmed glasses up his nose. He rested his elbows on the metal. Below them, a passenger ramp was fitted to the ferry's doors, and he watched it pointedly, fidgeting in his burgundy Letterman sweater, a large H on the lapel. She tried not to look at him. "Looks pretty perfect to me." "It's your first time," he said, pulling on a baseball cap that was stuffed in his back pocket. "I knew it." He smirked at a group of college boys throwing footballs on the dock. "Pass it to me, Bobby," he yelled, a smile in his voice. His friends lobbed the ball toward him, making tourists on the dock duck out of the way. He caught it and threw it back. "This island fooled me too once," he said. She smiled plainly at him, taking in the clapboard houses with tidy shutters and the charming row of ice cream shops and clam bars near the dock. "Well, it's just as I imagined," she said, picking up her suitcase and bidding him goodbye. As Hetty stepped onto the dock amid car horns and beginnings of conversations, she saw women of all ages in the latest summer fashions, many in the requisite dress of the wealthy and Jackie-obsessed, ballet flats, a pillbox hat and clutch, all in the same colour. Many were trying to catch the attention of arriving friends and relatives, so Hetty scanned the crowd, looking for anyone who seemed to be looking for her. Her eyes followed the man in the maroon cardigan sweater as he met up with his buddies, a porter wheeling his trunk behind him. He saw her staring, and his eyes crinkled, sending Hetty's gaze down to her feet, the corners of her mouth turning up. "Don't worry, there are plenty more of those," said a slim woman in navy capri pants, her loose blonde curls pinned back on either side of her ears with small red clips in the shape of anchors. They matched her ruby red lips. "You must be Hetty. I'm Jean Rose, and this is my husband, Ted." Hetty willed herself to shake the slender fingers of her new boss, a large emerald-cut diamond on the woman's ring finger. She'd babysat for neighbourhood kids aplenty, but she'd never worked for someone so well-to-do. She hoped Jean Rose didn't notice her clammy palms. "Nice to meet you. I'm excited to be here to, get to know your family." Jean Rose tilted her head toward the man in the maroon cardigan. "That's Sully Rhodes. Handsome, a little peculiar. Still, everyone's angling for him." Hetty nodded, pretending to understand, feeling a flash of excitement. Her new boss was already talking to her about well-connected young men. "Now, Jean Rose, we don't want to lose our babysitter to someone tall, dark and handsome on the first day." Ted winked at Hetty. She'd never seen someone with such dark eyes. His were nearly violet. "But you do need to meet our little prince and, of course, the Queen." Ted placed his hand on the bony shoulder of a scrawny boy standing next to him and then motioned to the little girl in a poofy dress with a towhead of curls. The boy threw the soccer ball he was holding at Hetty's feet harder than he should have. Hetty pretended not to notice the ache in her toes, bending down on one knee with a smile plastered on her face. "You must be Anna and Teddy." Hetty extended her hand out to the stuffed monkey Anna was clutching and shook the primate's fingers, which made the little girl chuckle and jump right into Hetty's arms, nearly knocking her backward. "Oh, aren't you a doll?" "Oh, aren't you a doll?" the boy snickered, making Hetty shift uncomfortably. She tried to noodle him in the belly, murmuring that they'd be friends in no time, but he bit his cheeks to keep from smiling. Ted pushed the boys back, which made him lurch forward towards Hetty. "Mind your manners, young man." Ted reached for Hetty's suitcase, exaggerating a groan upon lifting it. She'd packed a stack of her favourite novels, plus 2 biology textbooks to study, in case the scholarship committee allowed her to retake the final she'd failed that awful morning that led to that awful letter. Good thing she'd waited to open the letter until this morning. With Anna in her arms, Hetty couldn't cry. She would look certifiable. "This bellhop must have something else of yours." Ted pointed to a squat man in a white button jacket, walking toward them, holding a purse a different colour than her shoes, and she blushed. With all her nerves, she must have left it on the ferry. She took the frayed patent leather handle, watching Ted pull out a wallet thick with bills and hand the bellhop $2. $2. How she'd learned to stretch $2 over the years. On their leanest days, she and her mother squeezed ketchup packets into hot water for instant tomato soup. "I can get it, Mr. Williams, thank you." She picked up her luggage, but Mr. Williams insisted. She was just relieved the bag appeared shiny and new. Her roommate, Beryl, had never even used it. He pushed through the crowd, and they all followed, the sound of seagulls and laughter and good-natured greetings all around them. "There's no point in being formal. We prefer Ted and Jean Rose." "If you call me Mrs. Williams, I'll feel like my mother-in-law." Jean Rose rolled her eyes. "I don't want that woman's voice whispering in my ear all summer." "Be nice, Jeanie." Ted checked to make sure the kids were behind them. "Mother means well. Besides, it's the children she's most concerned about." "It's control she's most concerned about," Jean Rose quipped. She sighed, as if there was a lot more she wanted to say, but she seemed to remember that Hetty was walking next to her. She threaded her elbow into the crook of Hetty's arm. It felt warm and friendly, and Hetty hoped she and her new boss would always be this chummy. That was part of the first chapter of the glamorous and enticing Summer Darlings. There we go. We can get, we've got a good picture there. Summer Darlings by Brooke Lea Foster. I forgot to say this. It is out now. So it published on May the 5th. Yes, May the 5th. So you don't even have to wait to get your hands on it. You can do that right away. Summer Darlings by Brooke Lea Foster. I really hope you enjoyed that reading. Oh, thank you, Brooke. She just said your voice is gorgeous. Oh, that is so kind. Thank you very, very much. I can't wait to find out what happens next. I can't wait to find out what's going to happen to Hetty, because we all know things aren't going to work out exactly as she planned, obviously. And like I said, it's out now, so we don't have to wait to find out, which is absolutely brilliant. So I hope you enjoyed today's episode of First Chapter Fun. We have lots and lots of comments, just wonderful. Thank you. We have Elizabeth saying it sounds intriguing. Susan says can't wait to read this one. Kimberly says the same. So many lovely comments. Don't forget to leave wonderful comments leave comments for Brooke as well, so she can answer any questions that you might have. And Hank says, oh, the anchor clips. Perfect. Yes, those anchor clips. You could just really see them, couldn't you, in her hair. That was absolutely a lovely, gorgeous book to read from, and I can't wait to find out what happens next. So that was today's episode. On Thursday, we have this little number, Recipe for a Perfect Wife by Karma Brown. Now, let me tell you, this book, I've known Karma for a number of years. We have the same agent. We live in the same town. We're friends. We go for coffee and whatnot, you know, when there's no COVID anyway. And I've read all of her books and I've loved all of them. This one was a #1 bestseller in Canada for a good number of weeks. It's done extraordinarily well. I think it's gone into 12 territories or something. And it's one of those books that I read it, I put it down and I thought, dang it, I wish I'd written that. So don't miss Thursday's episode of First Chapter Fun, Recipe for a Perfect Wife. It is absolutely brilliant. That will be, as always, of course, at 11:30 Eastern Time. So we hope very much that you'll be able to join us for that reading too. So until then, as always, please stay safe, stay kind, and we'll see you on Thursday. Thank you for watching.